Good afternoon, everybody, and free to learn. Look, it's wonderful to have this opportunity to sit here and speak with you, and especially to have you here. It's great to have you here. Give yourself a round of applause. Just to make sure I get some of the mayor business taken care of today before we go on, I want to encourage all of you to go out and spend all the money you got. Okay. Just make sure you're inside the city limits of Jackson. We can use the help, but I want to thank you, and we're going to have hopefully more and more of these conferences here in Jackson, Mississippi, as we engage in what we consider to be the building of the new society on our new mission toward developing Jackson as a city of the future. I want to just go off script for just a second and share something with you that occurred to me while I was riding here, and to perhaps put this statement about where we are in Jackson and what we're doing in Jackson a little bit more in context. I don't want to just ignore anybody, but there's a lot of great people here in Mississippi, and so sometimes you know people talk about you and talk about what you've done. But we've done nothing by ourselves. Everything we've done with each other. We love each other, and we're fighting with each other, and we want to fight with you, right? Okay. Not against you, but with you. This is what we want to do. It was March of 1971 when I first came to the state of Mississippi. It was several months after the students at Jackson State had been murdered on the Jackson State campus, Gibbs and Green. There's a monument to them if you go by the Jackson State campus. I came with the provisional government as a Republican after as an officer of the provisional government. And what our mission was to establish a new community, which we call El Malik, which was Malcolm X's free name, we might say, which stood for El Hajj El Malik Shabazz. And the idea was, in pursuant of the RNA's mission or aims of the revolution, where there would be this new society built with no color, class, or gender discrimination, was to find a spot on the earth where we could take advantage of the collecting of money from good people in order to help build a new society, a new community is what we call it, a self-sustained new community, and to utilize at the same time the statutes or the congressional legislation which had been passed by Congress, what we call it the New Communities Act, which had in fact supplied loads of funds to Florida communities in order to develop communities there. But this would be a black majority community. It would be a community where everybody in it would be treated at the highest level and standards of human rights. It was a situation where we were in a period of history, if we can recall back in the early 70s, where we had made our case against discrimination, invidious discrimination, against racism, against Jim Crow, essentially. We had made that case countrywide in many different ways. But even though having made that case, we were still in a situation where, although the large African population in our country, and certainly in Mississippi, I don't know, at one point in history, which is certainly still a long time before 1971, some of you may or may not know, but Mississippi was 80% black. Mississippi right now is 40% black. But this large population was still suffering, because even though some doors and some restaurants and some bathrooms and some places of public accommodations were opening in terms of being able to have access, access did not mean control, and the lack of control meant, of course, the lack of income, the lack of ownership. And so a movement began to creep up, which they call it the Black Power movement, which was essentially a movement to try to gain some control, some ownership, some ability for us to build economic lives and to lead. At the time, in the city of Jackson, there was only about one black person on the police department. The other police departments around the city and in other jurisdictions were similar to that. Even though Jackson at that point was majority white, the counties west of Jackson were overwhelmingly black. But we lacked political power, we lacked economic power, we lacked social power. So the new communities, the idea of the Society for the Development of New Community and Development of New Community was kind of like an idea of that time in order to break into the development of a society which would set a standard and pace for people worldwide of how right here in Mississippi, where some of the most horrible oppression had gone on, we could begin to rescue ourselves, not only here, but around the world and around the country, from this invidious thing called racism that we understood was so badly and so dramatically portrayed in many different ways, in particular the one that was frozen in the minds of most of us who come from that area was Emmett Till in the Jet magazine. So when we moved to establish this new community, the same fella who was the head of one of the units of the Highway Patrol in Mississippi, who had been responsible for the leadership of the police who had shot and killed the Jackson State students, was in the middle of the road. And they said, Negroes, they didn't say Negroes, they said something else. Wasn't going to have no land celebration here today. Because we'd already purchased the land and we were going to the land. They said, Negroes are not going to have a land celebration here today. So the Klan was running up and down the road with their trucks and visible arms being shown. And the FBI was, I don't know what they were doing, but it wasn't helping us. And the police departments were all ganged together and they had set up a roadblock. But this was a different day about the break. And even though sometimes we break our days somewhat recklessly, it was certainly going to break. So it was 500 of us, and we said, we come in peace, but we come prepared. And so the 500 of us went down that road, toward that roadblock, and we had old people, we had young people, we had babies, we had everything. And we were praying. You know, hardened revolutionaries are driven back to prayer. We were praying, looking for God where we could find him. And because it was serious, because we knew a few things. We weren't going to be disrespected. We weren't going to do the dog thing again like Birmingham. We weren't going to do the water hose thing. We wasn't really in the turning the other cheek mode of thinking, right? Okay. Because as they had their stuff showing, we had our stuff showing, all right? Okay. And it was a near calamity, a colossal calamity. But almost like in the Bible, I know it's hard for a lot of you to believe this, that roadblock opened up, just like the Red Sea, all right? And we went through there, and when we got through there and we got to that land base, people started eating the dirt and all that kind of stuff, and that's where that slogan came, free the land. Understanding that critical to people's ability to exercise human rights and to exercise economic control over land or over their lives is their connection to territory and their governance of territory, their ability to exercise self-determination. So that vision and a lot of other problems, because a lot of you are familiar with the counterintelligence program era, people being sent to jail and framed and things of that nature, and a lot of that happened here and years of that, and a lot of that had to do with me going back to law school and becoming a lawyer. But the reason I started off with that little prelude is that I wanted to say that what has not changed is the vision of that new society, that new way of thinking, that new way of engineering and governing a society, where everyone would be treated with dignity, where there would be no class, be no gender, and there would be no color discrimination, right? That kind of vision. And even though it didn't happen in that little community which we call El Malik, which was settled into a predominantly black area in the near Bolton and Edwards, not too far west of here, but now it's about to happen in Jackson, Mississippi. And would you believe it? On June the 4th of 2013, we had put out the call. What we had said is everyone campaigned for office, we had said the people must decide. And that was the challenge. The people must decide. So we had to educate, motivate, organize. And we had to give the people clear choices of whether we wanted more of the same. We had already been through certain transitions and certain transformations. We had come in 1993 when we first challenged the fact that the government of Jackson had always been white. We had challenged that, and by 1997, we had successfully elected a black man to the government. However, there were still challenges ahead of us because the people recognized that merely changing the complexion of the fellow in office was not really going to do to get the job done, right? That there had to be a commitment to change. Merely by changing the colors did not necessarily change the ideas. And that the struggle, the real revolution, was a struggle of ideas. And so we put this to the people, and we set examples of things which this movement had done. And many of these people involved in this movement are sitting here right with you. In terms of the work they've done with workers, the work we've done with young people, the work we've done in terms of trying to struggle to correct the terrible housing situations, the struggle throughout the Delta, the struggle all over the state of Mississippi. The struggle, we said that right here we needed to not just be people who would now continue to march on City Hall, who would beat on the door of City Hall, who would demand things of City Hall. It was time that the people became City Hall, right? This is what we want. And so on June the 4th, the people did decide. And they decided that in the proud city of Jackson to elect a mayor who would represent that movement, to bring change to the city in the form of transparency, deep civic engagement, and economic reform and justice. And by electing the administration that we now serve, the people of Jackson made a clear statement that they are desiring fundamental change and are prepared to see it administered and, most importantly, to play a leading, and that's most important, a leading role in implementing it. And so over the next 4 years, we have set objectives in terms of political democracy. We have said that this will be the place where the people assemble. And so we've created a people's assembly where people come out not encumbered by the mayor, or not encumbered by the governor, not encumbered by other politicians, and they gather together and they discuss the problems and they raise their issues and they get an opportunity to learn what officials are talking about or what they're saying, and they have a chance to challenge these officials. And so we call that the People's Assembly, and we really grasp the idea from the concept which we seized from the Katrina catastrophe. Because when Katrina happened, we said again, the people must decide. Just as after Katrina, the people must decide. And so we established right here a People's Assembly in Jackson, and the People's Assembly is in many respects the heart, the soul of what we do here in Jackson, which we want to rename, y'all. This is now going to be called the City of Soul, all right? In fact, the city with a soul, the city of soul, and we might even call it Soul City, all right? Now, you know we got the claims of all that, right? We got the claims of all that. You come down, you're looking for the blues, you got it here, right? If you're looking for that jazz, the jazz circle through here too, all right? New Orleans wants to claim it, but we got it, we got control of it. And all of that snuck all the way up the Mississippi River and up Highway 55 and wound up in Chicago, and Sam Cooke, who came from Mississippi, right? Started that rhythm in the blues, right? And went all over to Motown and all that places, and I'm in New York, so y'all know how to you deal with it, but we got it, all right. So I want you to know that this is another reason to come to Jackson, all right. And go in and enjoy some of the churches if you're here to go to church, because that's a cultural experience, regardless of what your religious beliefs may be. Going to our churches, believe me, is a cultural experience, right? So make sure you go in there, and you'll know where Sam Cooke got his voice from. All right? And so, but we're building these institutions here, and we understand that critical to any political democracy has to be a way to frame it economically, has to be a way to put together the infrastructure and the things that we need to perform in terms of making our city strong economically. Jackson, like many urban cities, is struggling to overcome decades of economic divestment, deindustrialization, suburban flight, a declining tax base, chronic unemployment, poor performing schools, and an antiquated and decaying infrastructure. And so we have the problems that cities across the country have. And how we've decided to address this problem is to declare that infrastructure is the new economic frontier. That attacking and rebuilding and revitalizing the infrastructure of the city is the frontier. And revitalizing under certain basic rules and principles. To understand, first of all, that we got to use what we have to get where we want to go. And so what we do have is the ability now to determine who's going to be mayor, who's going to be city council, who's going to be supervisor, who's going to be sheriff. And as we begin to make those decisions, then we have to have those folks guided by principle. They can't just be in there because of what they look like. And so the reality is that we have to have rules. And so one of the rules is that Jackson's open for business. If you got a business, you can come to Jackson. But if you come to Jackson, you got to hire the people of Jackson, right? And so we're going to insource and not outsource what we do. We have to do that. And you have to expand the economic ownership base in Jackson. And so over 50% of your contractors or your subcontractors have to look like the people of Jackson, right? If they don't look like the people of Jackson, then it don't work in Jackson, right? But we want that business. We want Jackson not only to be a strong city which reflects the region, but we're looking for a global city. We're not going to bow to anybody's political preferences of who we deal with, right? We here in the city of Jackson are trying to build for the people of Jackson. And we are looking to do this with an understanding of the future. Understanding that the future demands, it doesn't ask, it doesn't just suggest, but it demands that we be concerned about green industry, that we could be concerned about self-perpetuating ways of economic development which don't kill people, but which bring people to life, right? And so what we look at is ways that we can look at gardens. And I was pleasantly surprised. We had a meeting the other night where people in the city that's into urban gardening, and it was packed. I didn't realize so many people were in the urban garden. I guess I'm going to have to go out and grow one in my front yard. But they were there, and they were thirsting for knowledge and ready to move on. And we need help. We need help to help develop these things. So we have to have an emphasis on the environment and on improving the environment. We have so many bridges and roads and things of that nature that we have to improve. And so we need the kind of help that we can get from philanthropic organizations as well as from other sources to do this. We have a challenge in Jackson. We're under a consent decree that was signed in the prior administration in order to deal with our sewer system. So like $400 million has to be put into it in a period of 17 years. Altogether, we have about a $1.2 billion requirement as far as our water, our sewage, our drainage that we're going to have to do over a period of years. So we're going to need all the help we can get. But we are beginning to do it ourselves, too. We're beginning to contribute in many different ways. And since I've got the sign that I'm talking too long and it's time to move on, I'm going to do that. But I'm going to remind you as I go is that any kind of investment that you can make here in Mississippi and in Jackson, and any kind of work that you can help us do will certainly help not only Mississippi and Jackson, but ultimately will help the world. I think that we qualify for having a history of folks who have fought oppression and who have been in the worst place. Now, using our biblical references and whatever else we know, we're about to make the last come to first, right? And so it's going to be important that we get the assistance that we need, or get the assistance that we need. We want to thank you for coming here and sharing this with us. And I think there's some handouts which talk about some of the mission that we have here in Jackson. So have a chance to look at it, have a chance to appreciate it, and to share with us your ideas. We're looking for ideas. We're looking for developmental ideas. It's going to take about a year for us to come up with a comprehensive economic development plan as far as Jackson is concerned. But what you have before you is some of the bare elements of what we're talking about. And we're going to be adding to those, and we're going to be trying to take the best ideas from the world. Thank you very much, and free to land.